In this module, we're going to talk about the DISC profile. If you remember earlier, we talked about the platinum rule: treat other people how they want to be treated. And in order to do that effectively, we need to understand how people behave. So we're going to go over DISC and understand people's behaviors as you can describe them. So this is all created by William Marston at Harvard University. I want to be very clear. DISC is a profile test, not an aptitude test. It does not measure IQ, grit, resourcefulness, or anything like that. Additionally, there's no right or wrong, good or bad. It's just who they are, and based on who they are, they will behave a certain way. It's a universal language of observable human behavior and emotions. There are 4 distinct profiles when we're talking about the DISC. We got the dominance, this is the D, describes how you handle problems and challenges. You got the influence, the I factor, how you handle people and influence other people. You got the steadiness factor, the S, how you handle change and pace yourself. And finally, the conscientiousness, the C factor, and this is how you handle rules and procedures set by others. So again, it's a personal assessment. It's used by over 1 million people per year. It's a non-judgmental tool. Again, it provides a common language that we can use to better understand ourselves and others through behaviors. Here are a few ways that DISC can help you. First, you become more knowledgeable about yourself. You'll figure out how you respond to conflict, what motivates you, what causes you stress, and how you solve problems. Also, by understanding DISC, you can understand your team better, right? How other people behave, and now you can adjust your behavior to coordinate with their behavior. And more importantly, while you're here, is you're gonna get better at sales, because if you can understand how the other person behaves, you can modify your behavior to connect with them. And finally, as you become more knowledgeable about yourself, you will become a better leader. Let's begin with the Ds, the dominant profiles. You can see a D because they have quick reaction, a maximum effort to control, a minimal interest for caution in relationships. They're not really concerned how other people are going to react to this. They're going to operate in a current time frame, what's happening at the here and now. They're motivated by direct action. And finally, there's a tendency to avoid involvement. We don't need other people here. We can handle this ourselves. And so how Ds generally see themselves: driven, resolute, ambitious, decisive, competitive, independent, prompt, determined, time-conscious, persuasive, strong-willed, and results-oriented. All in all, it sounds pretty good. The problem is that if you're not a D, if you're an I, S, or C, here's how an I, S, and C generally see a D profile: belligerent, arrogant, egotistical, unyielding, impatient, aggressive, controlling, dictatorial, and tyrannical, right? Not really good, feel-good adjectives to describe another human being. What about their body language? How can you tell you're dealing with a D? They're gonna keep their distance from others. They're gonna have very powerful handshakes, so you're gonna feel a very strong grip, and they might even rotate their wrist to really let you know that they're in charge. And while they're standing further away, they're gonna lean forward aggressively. They're gonna use very direct eye contact, and their gestures can be a little controlling, kind of like an air traffic controller directing. That's how you're gonna see a D profile gesture when they're communicating. They're gonna talk fast, usually kind of loud. They're gonna love competitions, sports, games. You're gonna see awards of pictures or pictures of them with other people. They're really motivated by challenges. That's what really gets a D out of bed. They're gonna be very impatient, they can be demanding, and their biggest fear is being taken advantage of. Now, how can someone with a dominant profile have a fear of being taken advantage of? Well, their whole lives, they've moved very fast. Details is not something that's really important to them. And so they'll overlook some details while they're making important decisions, and they've been taken advantage of in the past, and that's why they have that fear. So I was confused by this initially, but as I learned more about myself, I have learned that I sometimes have a dominant profile, and looking back, I've made some really foolish, expensive mistakes because I was moving too fast. What are the strengths of a high D person? First, they've got an ego. Now, we typically look at ego as a negative connotation, right? We look down a little bit on people with an ego, but in this context, someone with an ego is someone that can face adversity and keep moving forward. Someone with a D personality has faced rejection, has faced failure, and they keep getting up. So in this context here, an ego is a good quality. They're going to be problem solvers, right? They're motivated by challenge. They love solving problems. They enjoy challenging assignments, and they're going to drive for results. Results are ultimately all that matters. Feelings don't matter. They just want results. They're positive. They like confrontation. They enjoy power and authority, and they're motivated by direct answers. Do not beat around the bush with a D personality. However, they do have their limitations. They may overstep authority, right? They're going to seek forgiveness, not permission. They may use fear as a motivator. They can be very poor listeners, impatient delegators. I didn't want this done now. I wanted this done yesterday. They're going to lack tact and diplomacy, right? They're not going to operate in a way to make sure you feel good about it. They're just going to move forward very quickly. They dislike routine work. Do not stick them in a cube. They will become restless, and they may over-delegate and under-instruct. If you read the book Rocket Fuel, this is your typical visionary. All the ideas without any of the details on how to get it done. Famous Ds. You got Donald Trump. Love him or hate him, you're going to see a lot of those negative limitations. Describes him pretty well. You also got Bobby Knight, right? We've all seen videos of him throwing a chair across the basketball court. There's also stories of him, choking students in practice. Guy's got some pretty strong feelings. And we got Steve Jobs. Now, everyone loves Steve Jobs. They love Apple, but the guy was a tyrant, right? He would regularly berate his employees and tell them how awful whatever it was that they were delivering, how awful that product was and why they wasted his time, right? So what did he do? He drove for results, and it's the reason why Apple is one of the most valuable companies in the world. Some industries they're going to be in. They're going to be business owners. They're going to be general managers. They're going to be salespeople. These are people that generally drive for results. When you're communicating with a high D, you want to be very clear, specific, and to the point. Stick to business, right? Stick to the matter at hand. Don't try to beat around the bush. Get to it. You want to come prepared with all requirements, objects, support material, and a well-organized package. Present your facts logically and plan your presentation efficiently. Don't take too long, right? A longer presentation will only frustrate a D. Provide alternative choices. Let them make the decisions, right? If they feel like they're in control, they're going to be happier in working with you. Provide facts and figures about probability of success, effectiveness of options. If you disagree with a high D, take issues with the facts. That's all that matters. If you bring your feelings into this, they're going to walk all over you. And finally, provide a win-win opportunity when you're communicating with a D. The next profile is the inspiring profile, also referred to as influential. And you're going to see that they're going to be described by a rapid reaction. They're going to move very fast. Maximum effort to involve other people, because if there's not other people involved, what's the point in doing this? Minimal interest in routine, just like the Ds. Don't stick them in a cubicle. Having a routine will only drive them crazy. They always operate in a future time frame. So while the Ds are operating on what's in front of them, the Is are always operating in the future, which is sometimes why they appear to be daydreaming and not physically present. They also have an impulsive action. So if you go to these stores that have these really long checkout lines, the reason why is because the Is are the ones that are buying everything in the checkout lines. And there's a tendency to reject isolation. They don't want to do anything by themselves. And so if you were to ask an I how they would describe themselves, you're going to hear words like enthusiastic, charming, outgoing, inspiring, optimistic, flexible, open, creative, spontaneous, convincing, easygoing, and communicative, right? All sounds great. However, if you're not an I and you happen to be a D, S, or a C, here's how you see an I. Selfish, superficial, overly self-confident, talks too much, bad listeners, distracted, and careless. Not so positive. So how can you tell an I based off their body language? They're going to be very tactile. They're going to be touching your elbow, your forearm, your shoulder. Big hugs, right? If a homeowner is trying to hug you in the first 30 seconds of an appointment, you got a person that's an I profile. Very relaxed, very friendly, friendly eye contact, expressive gestures. So whereas the Ds are kind of demonstrative, the Is are just going to have very big gestures, right? They're going to be in this range, and they may often come too close, right? And so the I behavior, they can be amusing, creative. They'll elevate the mood regardless of who they're with. They could be at an accounting conference and they'll make it entertaining. Given unlimited space, so they will consume all the oxygen in the room. Nobody else will be able to get into the conversation. I've been in conversations where there's 8 or 9 people and one person is doing 80 to 90% of the talking. That's an I profile. And their stories may not reflect reality, right? So I caught a fish this big, might have actually been this big. And when you're interacting with an I, they're gonna talk enthusiastically, a lot of chit chat at first. They like people activities. You're gonna see memorabilia of friends, customers, suppliers, right? People. They're motivated by social recognition. And so Jerry Seinfeld did a skit a while ago about how funny it is to go into a real estate office because you're gonna see awards and plaques almost in every room, like they were giving out participation trophies. And the truth is, that's kind of how it is in a real estate office because you're filled with D's and I's. And so they may be somewhat disorganized. In some ways, it look like maybe a hurricane just hit their desk. And their biggest fear is personal rejection, not being liked. Not being liked is the worst possible thing you can do to an I. And so some of their strengths, they're very optimistic. They're good at persuading people. They can see the big dream, right? They're dreamers, and they can communicate it. They're people-oriented, team-oriented, and they're motivated by praise and strokes. So if you're familiar with the 5 love languages, words of affirmations are really good around I profiles. However, their limitations are they may act impulsively, unrealistic in appraising people, so they're great for most roles or in a lot of roles, but not necessarily for recruiting because they're gonna see the best version of that person, and attentive to detail. Details are like fine print, really irrelevant. Situational listeners, they truly will hear what they want to hear. And it's really important. I've actually had this happen to me as a business owner in negotiating with an I. Whatever you negotiate, be sure to put that in writing because they will completely forget what they committed to, right? They got really bad case of happy ears. They can be flaky. This is your friend that will disappear on you 2 days before that trip to Europe, or you scheduled a lunch with them and like, oh, I forgot, that was today. That's an I profile. So very disorganized. They may overpromise, right? So you guys hear overpromise and underdeliver as a sales industry. It's these I's that are giving us a bad name because they're overly optimistic in what they believe they can accomplish in a period of time. On time, start time, completely optional, right? Just like the speed limit for most of us. For them, we say, hey, we're gonna start at 12. They'll show up at 12:30 or 2:30, and for them, it's no big deal. And they'll forget to close because they're having such a great time. Who are some famous I's? Robin Williams, Kevin Hart, Oprah Winfrey, Ellen DeGeneres. What kind of industries will they be in? Servers, bartenders, realtors, sales in general, right? They love people. Any job where they get to be around people, they'll enjoy it. So if you're communicating with a high I, be sure you allow time for relating and socializing. Talk about people and their goals. Focus on the people and action items. But again, put details in writing because if you don't, it will come back to bite you. Ask for their opinion. Provide ideas for implementing action. Using the time to be stimulating, fun, and fast-moving. This is the reason why realtors love happy hours. Provide testimonials from people they see as important or prominent. You can see a theme here, right? People. They want to see people involved in working with them. The next profile is a stable profile. You're going to see a very calm reaction. Doesn't matter if the world is falling apart, they're going to be calm. Maximum effort for connection. They want to create a deep connection. So I's are going to have a lot of friends. S's are going to have some very deep friendships. Very minimal interest in change. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Even if it is broke, don't fix it. They'll operate in the current time frame. So D's are present time frame. I's are in the future. S's are also in the present time frame. They're very supportive in their action and a tendency to avoid conflict. They don't want to upset other people. So how do S's see themselves? Friendly, calm, reliable, considerate, pleasant, patient, predictable, stable, team player, discreet, thoughtful, and a good listener. And those are pretty great ways to describe oneself. Well, what if you're a D, I, or C? How would you see an S? Well, generally, they also like the S's. Pleasant, friendly, caring. Sometimes says yes when they really mean no, and they could be part of the silent resistance. They also have a reputation of talking behind other people's backs, but I want to put this in context here, right? They're afraid of conflict. And so they won't tell the person that they have a conflict with what's wrong. So they'll tell a friend, and you know how it works. You tell one person, everybody knows. But that's the reason why S's have a reputation of talking behind other people's backs. They're afraid of change. Why are we changing things? They can be stubborn, unconcerned, and indifferent. So if you're observing an S as far as body language, they may be relaxed, they may come close. They're methodical in their movements. They have a tendency to lean backwards. So whereas D's are distant and leaning forward, S's are closer, but leaning backwards. They have a friendly eye contact and they prefer small scale gestures. So D's are demonstrative, I's are out here, S's are gonna be right here. When you're interacting with an S, they're gonna be very easy to hang out because they pleasantly and genuinely care for others. I mean, why would you not wanna hang out with someone like that? They can be wishy-washy and unclear. You don't know where they stand sometimes, and their indecision can kill energy in other people. When they're talking, they're methodical, logical, soft voice. They'll enjoy family activities or small groups. You're gonna see pictures of their family. If you're walking to a house and you see pictures of their family all along the hallway, as low as your ankle, or all the way up the stairwell, you're dealing with an S. They're motivated by team projects and helping others. Their limitations, they may resist change, and they can be a little possessive of ideas. And finally, their biggest fears are either taking risks or confronting. Some of the strengths of a high S person, they're gonna be very loyal to those they identify with, right? These are your ride or die people. They're gonna be great listeners. They can be very patient, very empathetic. They love to have a team environment, and long service is deemed important. If you're dealing with an S and you're reviewing the resume, you're gonna see that they've been in one place for very long periods of time. Likewise, if you're gonna work for an S, they're gonna see on your resume, if you're job skipping a lot, they won't even give you the time of day. And they will overservice, whereas the I's will overpromise and underdeliver. Your S's are gonna overservice. So if you have a role where you're dealing with people a lot, customers, clients, and so on, you want your S's and talking to them. They're gonna be very oriented towards family activities, and they're motivated towards traditional activities. Some of the limitations of an S, they're gonna get in a rut. They like to maintain the status quo. They're gonna resist change. I've said this over and over again. They're gonna hold grudges. They're gonna lack a projected sense of urgency. They may be slow to act without precedent. If they haven't seen it done this way before, they're not gonna do it this way today. They're gonna hesitate to move. Rather than delegate, they may do the work themselves. And the reason why is they don't wanna overburden anybody, right? Like for them, they're happy to pick you up at 2 o'clock in the morning, tire blown out, or you're in the drunk tank, they will come pick you up. However, they don't wanna burden you, so they'd rather do it themselves. Very difficult to read, and they may take too long to close, right? They wanna make sure everything's right before they ask for the order. Now, as far as being difficult to read, don't play poker with these guys. You can't see any reaction. Like I said, the world could be falling apart, and their facial expressions literally will not change. Who are some famous S's? Mr. Rogers, Mother Teresa, Gandhi. Not a very long, exhaustive list, because S's generally are plenty happy being behind the scenes. Some industries they're gonna be in: administrative, teachers, and nurses. As you can see, these are all support type roles. So if you're communicating with a high S, start with personal comments, break the ice. You gotta be very sincere in your interest. Do not fake the interest. They can tell. Patiently draw out the personal goals, listen and be responsive, present logically, softly, non-threateningly, move casually, informally, and if the situation affects them personally, look for hurt feelings. Like I said earlier, you can't read them. So you gotta be proactive in seeing if their feelings are hurt, provide personal assurances and guarantees, and finally, if a decision is required of them, allow them time to think, obviously with the exception, if you're dealing with a homeowner, no one's allowed to think about it. And finally, we got the analyticals, also referred to as conscientious or compliance. They're gonna be described with a slow reaction. They're gonna take a long time to do things, maximum effort to organize. You gotta make sure that all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed, minimal interest in relationships, just like the D profile. They're gonna operate in a historical time frame. So whereas the D's and S's are today and I's in the future, C's are always looking in the past. They're gonna be very cautious in their action and a tendency to avoid involvement. There's no need to get other people involved. How do C's see themselves? Accurate, cautious, correct, detail-oriented, logical, methodical, orderly, quality-oriented, reflective, systematic, thorough, and unassuming, which is not terrible, right? These are the kind of people that you want in your organization. However, if you're not a C, D's, I's, and S's generally have the biggest challenges dealing with C's because how do they see them? Evasive, defensive, perfectionist, reserved, fastidious, meticulous, hesitant, conservative, lacking independence, questioning, suspicious, tedious, aloof, and cold-hearted. As you can see, this list is very exhaustive when you're dealing with the C's. Sorry, C's. What about their body language? They're gonna prefer to keep a distance from others, right? They're gonna stand or sit completely still. At a conference, they can sit in the same spot 4 hours, 8 hours without moving. They're often gonna have a closed body language, their arms gonna be crossed, they're gonna have very direct eye contact, and it's kind of funny because D's and I's gestures are in this range, S's are down here. C's, they can talk to you and their hands will never move. They'll be on the table this whole time or in their pockets the entire conversation. That's how you'll know you're dealing with a C. What about a C's behavior? Well, they're gonna be very calm, level-headed, and they'll think before they speak. They will very rarely actually put their foot in their mouth. However, their critical thinking can quickly turn into suspicion, questioning everyone around them. Everyone can become suspect, and that's what happens when you're overanalyzing everything. Their behaviors, they're gonna talk in a monotone with very little emotion, very precise. They love do-it-yourself projects. They love solitude. So during the COVID pandemic, the I's were bouncing off the walls because they couldn't talk to people. The C's were having the time of their lives. They didn't have to talk to anybody and they got to do whatever they want. This is bliss. You're gonna see charts, graphs, and functional things in their office. They're motivated by well-planned on-time activities in very small groups. Their limitations though, they may be too hard on themselves and too hard on other people. And their biggest fear is criticism of their work. So you can make fun of their outfit, you can make fun of their cars, their hair, whatever. But if you're gonna criticize their work, boy, you better be prepared to justify whatever it is you're about to tell them. The biggest strengths of a C, critical thinking, right? We've been saying this over and over again. High standards for themselves and their subordinates. Very well disciplined, motivated by the right way to proceed, which generally sounds like a good thing, right? But you can see if they're motivated by the right way to proceed, it'd be hard to get them to do something differently. They're very accurate and very well organized. However, they're gonna hesitate to act without precedent, just like the S's. They're gonna be bound by procedures and methods. It's always been done this way. We can't change it. They will not risk stating new ideas without qualifying what it is they're trying to tell you. They're not gonna verbalize their feelings, right? Feelings don't really matter. They may do the work themselves and not delegate. So the S's, they don't wanna burden you. That's the reason why they didn't wanna delegate. The C's, they just don't trust you, right? If I have you do it, I'm gonna have to overlook it, correct it, and fix it myself later on. I might as well just do it myself. It'll be faster that way. Have you heard someone say that before? You're dealing with an analytical. And they may yield position to avoid controversy. Not that they'll agree with you, they'll just kind of dismiss you. Yeah, you're right. And they'll move on. Who are some famous C's? Bill Gates, Albert Einstein. And if Dr. Spock was a real human being, he would be the epitome of a C profile, right? All logic, no emotions. Industries, engineers, accountants, scientists, mathematicians. You can see lots of numbers because people don't really matter, or at least their feelings don't. And if you're communicating with a C, prepare your case in advance. You better know what you're talking about if you're gonna come in for an argument. Approach in a straightforward, direct way. Again, don't beat around the bush. Use a thoughtful approach. Build credibility by looking at both sides of the issue. Present specifics and do exactly what you said you were gonna do. If you got time, drop an action plan. Schedules, dates, milestones. Take your time, but be persistent. And if you disagree, prove it with data, facts, or testimonials from respected people, right? It's gotta be respected people, not just anybody. Provide them with information and the time they need to make a decision and allow them their space. Now, we've been describing D's, I's, S's, and C's as if everyone's one profile. But what happens is there's actually a healthy number of people that are two profiles. And if they're two profiles, we're gonna see often it could be a D and an I and an S and a C, or a C and a D. And so if you look at this chart right here, right? The reds are the D's, the I's are the yellows, The greens are the S's and the blues are the C's. And so if someone's a D and an I or red and yellow, that just means they're extroverted. If they're an S and a C or a blue and a green, they're introverted. If they're an I and an S, yellow and green, they're gonna be very people-oriented. And if they're a D and a C, or a red and a blue, they're gonna be task-oriented, right? So those are the most common combinations if someone has two profiles. Rarely, we're gonna see someone that's gonna be a yellow and a blue, someone that's social and analytical, if you can picture that. Very rare bird. And the oddest duck of all is someone that's a red and a green or a D and an S, right? So how can someone be a driver and seek stability? Well, that's the oddest combination, and funny enough, that's who I am. I literally never fit in any box. Anywhere I applied and they checked my profile, there was no job for me. So let's pretend we take all the D's, all the I's, all the S's, all the C's, and we separated them and say, hey guys, we're gonna decorate Christmas trees. What are you gonna see? The way a D would decorate a Christmas tree is they're gonna go to the Christmas lot and they're gonna buy the biggest possible tree, even if it won't fit in the house, right? They'll cut off the top if they need to, but man, they're gonna have some extravagant ornaments. They might have something from Tiffany's. In a perfect world, their tree would be as big as the tree at the Rockefeller Center, right? It's gonna be huge and colorful, unnecessarily expensive. What about the eyes? Well, with the eyes, when they're decorating a Christmas tree, it's gonna be an event, right? We're gonna have all these people around. We're gonna have some eggnog. It's gonna have some fairy lights, very sparkly decorations. It's gonna be very colorful. What about an S? Well, Christmas tree with an S, it's gonna be a little subdued, right? Not boring, just subdued. The most important ornaments are the ones that are from friends and family. And finally, with the analyticals, what are you gonna find? Well, they're gonna do a lot of research before they buy that tree. Probably gonna be a fake Christmas tree so they can decorate the same every single year. And it's gonna have very traditional colors, right? It's gonna be gold, red, and green. And the lights are gonna be precisely spaced apart. There will be no gaps anywhere in the tree. And this is how my trees look like in my house because my wife is an analytical. All right, so we've gone through this, right? The D's, I, S's, and C's. We've looked at the Christmas trees. Are you still confused? That's okay. If you're still overwhelmed, all you gotta do is mirror their behaviors. If you can mirror your customer, your prospect before you, you will naturally behave in a way that's consistent with how they behave. Mirroring is still the shortcut. It's the most effective shortcut for our entire sales process. If you can master that, you'll be very successful in sales.